From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to SBI TV, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today we're going to show how revenue leaders can build a legacy in their company that long survives their departure. You might think about this as an edgy topic, so I'm looking forward to discussing this. I'm your host, Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. Joining me in the studio today is a special guest, Eric Vermillion, who is a good friend of mine, good friend of the firm's. Eric was the former CRO of Blue Cat. So, first off, good to see you, man. Thanks
Good to be here.
Thanks for coming by. And maybe by way of getting started, because this was a topic that bubbled up to us from a lot of folks in the field, and you've been kind enough because you got a good opinion on it. But before we get into that, maybe just introduce yourself to the audience, a couple of your career stops along the way, and maybe your most recent run at Blue Cat.
Yeah, you bet. So I've spent my career in technology and in software sales, primarily application software. Longest run was at NICE Systems, where I spent 8 years and got to be part of the story from 200 million to $1 billion. Yeah. Followed that with a couple of years at a Francisco Partners-owned company that was a bit of a turnaround. And then I've spent the last 3.5 years at Blue Cat, where I just left. We sold the company to Madison Dearborn Partners out of Chicago, and I'm working on the next thing. Yeah,
very good. So when it comes to that run you've had, and you're at this sort of critical juncture of what I would say is halftime, right, in one's career, sort of early, mid-ish 40s, right? Not revealing any.
2-minute warning or something.
That's right. So how are you thinking about things in terms of the next stop? Because you've had a great run and you've had some really good experience. But I mean, our viewers and listeners go through exactly what you're going through. How's the process been so far?
Yeah, it's fun. There's a ton of interesting stuff out there, and software is a good place to be. I'm at a point at halftime now where I don't have to work for jerks. I can be a little bit more selective in what I do, and so I'm planning to go somewhere and have a lot of fun and have a good run.
Glad you're here, man. So for those of you that are watching or listening, and if you don't want to miss any of our shows or our podcasts, if you want to access the content library, if you're an iPhone user, all you have to do is download the SBI app. And that's very simple. Just go to the App Store, search for Sales Benchmark Index, and then just use your iPhone for the notifications, and we can keep you company on your commute, while you're lifting weights, while you're standing in line at TSA. So let's jump into the questions. So Eric and I are going to talk about this whole concept around building a tradition and a legacy. So why this topic? So Eric, you and I were chatting before the show, and I told you some of the topic creation that we have reflects the feedback we get from viewers and listeners and people that come through the studio in Dallas going, hey, what about this? Or do you have anything on that? Or what do you see on this? What do you see on that? And this whole concept of like legacy and sustainability as sales leaders historically have an 18 to 24 month tenure. For the 12.5 years we've been doing this at SBI, and I've been here for almost all of those, that's a metric we pay attention to, and the data has not moved in terms of the average tenure of the leader. However, the desire of the sales leaders to leave an impression, and I think most people that lead people, they want to know they made an impact. So you're kind enough to take this topic, and I think you've got a good purview into what this looks like. So you might be saying out there, how does a sales leader think about walking in, starting a legacy, leaving a legacy? So why don't we start just from sort of grounding people around expectations? And when you think about that term of a legacy, what comes to mind for you relative to running a sales organization?
Yeah, look, I think if it's John Wooden or something like that you're shooting for, given that tenure that you just described, it's probably unrealistic. But I think the benchmark needs to be make it a better place than it was when you got there. I've never understood people that take joy in seeing things collapse when they leave. It just doesn't compute for me. I think the best barometer of your success is when you see it beget success, beyond your time there. And so I feel very confident that every place I've been from the time I was a rep, through to the last stint at Blue Cat, I left it in a better spot than it was when I got there, and I'm happy to see the success that continued beyond my departure in all those places.
So we got the chance, and I got the chance to have a little bit of a front row seat to what you did at Blue Cat most recently. But I guess share with the audience, when you think about like building a sales culture and building this identity that outlasts one's tenure. If you think about companies like a PTC or an EMC or an ADP, like apparently everything has 3 initials. When you think about some of these great sales cultures, right, that we know and or worked in and were part of, there are all these like sort of identifying characteristics about being part of that.
Yeah.
If one is watching the show and says, yeah, I want to build that slowly but surely, and I know it doesn't get done overnight, where do you start?
Well, we're not here today to talk about corporate strategy, right, or those things. I mean, you got to have that stuff. Those are, some of the fundamentals. And then, just from a sales execution perspective, you got to have a sound sales methodology. You got to have good training and enablement for your team, good forecasting methodology. You got to understand the metrics. But those aren't, they can check out all of the materials that SBI's put out for for reams of stuff on that. The part that I think is kind of the secret sauce is the tradition aspect of it. And if you think about it, when you do something once, people sometimes get excited about it. There's a little bit of a rah-rah effect, but it's quickly forgotten. You do it twice. Maybe people will say, why don't we do that again? But once you do things 3 times, I mean, many boys' weekend, trips to Vegas have become tradition by that same methodology, right?
But, different reasons. Different reasons. They become traditions, yes.
But you do it 3 times, it becomes a tradition. I think, building those kind of traditions, people that have worked in my organization know that they're going to do a personal business plan every year. I've instituted something called a deal partner program where it forces people to talk about deals with people they ordinarily wouldn't, because there are a lot of other intelligent people that you work with that can probably help you other than your sales manager. People that work for me know that we're going to get together twice at the kickoff and during the middle of the year. They know they're going to see my face every week. It doesn't matter if you've got a 10-person sales organization or 200 or 2,000 person sales organization. I haven't had the privilege of leading a 2,000-person one yet, but that seeing my face every week and hearing what we did well last week and what we're going to go out and do this week is. That's a tradition that I think people that are part of my organization believe in. And then I think one of the things that we take advantage, executives take for granted, and certainly CROs, is that when you're in that position, you've got the opportunity to drive a lot about the culture of the organization.
Well said.
And so, if the culture that you want to create is one that people don't have respect for their personal family time, you can do that in a hurry by getting pissed off at people for not responding to an email on Sunday morning. If you embrace the ethical gray area, then that can become a cultural thing in a hurry. So you gotta realize that when you're the leader, you got to be firm in your position on both those tangible sales execution things, but also in the, building the traditions, and then sort of the soft things that make it an interesting place to be.
So if you think about what Eric talked about there were the symbolic cadence things that are all part of a leader putting their own spin and image and fabric into the organization, right? Eric said the personal business plan, the deal partner program. Many of you watching or listening probably have your thing. Whatever it is, it's something that helps identify this sales culture that you're creating. So, Eric, on the softer piece and talking about culture, the thing that I always default to, and SBI well enough to know we're a very values-driven firm, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody in my firm carries a values card in their money clip or in their purse. We talk about a value every day. We got values on the wall in the studio. We recognize it's a big thing because I believe the values are how you behave. So they have to be action-oriented. That's something we do here. I'm not saying everybody has to do it, but that's something that is that's really important about being at SBI. When you think about that unique sales culture, but the sales culture existing in the business culture, because I run a small firm, it's pretty easy to do that with 100 people, right? Or easier. When you're running an organization with a couple thousand people and you've got departments and multiple locations, international, thoughts on the sales culture inside the overall corporate culture?
You mean as it relates to interaction with the rest of the organization?
And not having sales walled off to it's like, ooh, that's what we do in sales, but this is what the rest of the company does.
Yeah, well, I think we've all worked for, any of us who've had more than a few years in sales have worked for that organization where sales builds the wall, or there's this, higher than thou sort of perspective that people have. And I think that's super harmful. Yep. And so, having a level of transparency is critical in, making the rest of the organization feel like they're a part of what's going on in sales. I think sales is critical to the success of an organization. Yep. But so is good product development. Yep. So is good work by the legal team and the finance team and the people team. Yep. And the more you appreciate that and get your sales organization to appreciate that, and I think that absolutely starts with the leader. I mean, the tone that the leader sets with the rest of the disciplines in the organization carries through to their team in a big way.
Cool, man. Always good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for coming by. All right, everybody. So that was a great show on a heady topic, around sales culture and building and sustaining your own personal legacy. I would tell you from the point of view that we have been in this business, we follow people as much as we follow companies. And it's very interesting after almost 13 years to look at where some sales leaders end up and who goes with them, and maybe where some don't, and they're constantly wondering what happened. So if you have a takeaway, I would tell you I'd leave you with this relative to the number of followers you create. And to Eric's point about my job is to help you on your next. I love that term, so we're going to steal that from him. But how are you helping your people reach their full potential? So, as always, you're part of the SBI audience, and I appreciate you for that. My team and I give you our best. I appreciate all the continued support. And as always, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.